Hello, darlings, and welcome back to Diva Deep Cuts. I am your host, Ben, and thank you for joining me as we journey through the best songs you've never heard by the great divas of today and yesterday. Thank you so much for listening here on Spotify or on YouTube, and I hope you enjoy this as much as I do. This week we are covering legendary touring artist and badass of the industry. It is none other than Pink. I am almost a day one OG Pink fan. I came in to loving her music and her style and attitude with her second single, Most Girls, in 2000. But I have just been along for the ride ever since for her stylistic shifts, her artistic growth, her having children and that shifting her perspective on life. Um, yeah, I've had the privilege of seeing her live once on the Truth About Love tour. My sister and I drove through a snowstorm to get to that concert in Cleveland, but we did not drive off the road, and the concert was well worth the peril. And by the time we drove home, the weather was fine and the roads were plowed. So, this is one I could probably do without even listening to the playlist I made because I'm so familiar with her music because I have literally grown up with it and it has soundtracked my life since the end of elementary school. So let's dive right in and go back to Pink's debut album, Can't Take Me Home, and focus on the track Let Me Let You Know from the year 2000. So, what I love about this track are her vocals. Most of the rest of her debut album is pretty run of the mill, turn of the millennium teen pop with R&B tinges that Pink and many of her contemporaries were doing at the time because it was what the record labels were focused on that made money. But on Let Me Let You Know, she just lets her vocals rip at the climax of the song. There's such power in her belting and such resonance, and she just cuts through the noise. Like, you know that she's not just some, I don't know, record label picked vehicle for money, that she is the real deal with the talent, that her voice is just stunning and she can go there. And none of the other tracks on Can't Take Me Home really showcase that. And it's also kind of a surprise. Pretty dated 90s R&B production at first when it gets started and it's just kind of floating through the verses. But then when it gets to the bridge and her ad libs over the final chorus, it just erupts into this amazing belt that's just like, wow. Wow, she just blew everyone's hair back and blew the roof off of the place. Like, this is legit vocals here. So I love it for that reason. I haven't found many people online who share my sentiments about this song, but I do love it so. And if you are a fan of belting from the likes of Mariah and Whitney, like, take a listen to this one, and I'm sure you will like what you find. So, going forward, one album. Next up is Lonely Girl, a collaboration with Linda Perry, who sings some vocals on this track from her 2001 sophomore studio album, Misunderstood. So, what I like about Lonely Girl is the way that the pre chorus into the chorus has like multiple key changes. It just feels like Pink is singing about her own insecurities and the way her life has changed from being a teenager to becoming a global superstar with her first two albums. And the way that she just like changes the key, everything turns on a dime, and it feels like the world kind of turns sideways. Um, like the song is going to just tip over. And I like the call and response between Linda Perry and Pink on the chorus, that it's like Linda Perry is kind of acting as her mentor, her conscious, her therapist, who's like asking her tough questions, and then she ad libs responses. And it's kind of not unheard of, but an atypical structure on a pop record. And the song itself is more directly like mid tempo alternative rock. So it was the beginnings of seeing how Pink would start shifting her sound as she kept growing as an artist and continuing to carve her path of artistic freedom and expression. But I think it's one of those things where the song is very, very personal to Pink's life experience, both confronting um, the trauma and difficulties that she faced growing up, and then the different challenges of suddenly becoming famous and having to navigate through all of that. And yet, I think it's one of those things where it's hyper specific, but there's a kernel of relatability in it as people just find themselves growing up, coming of age, becoming adults in the world and in the workforce, and like still not really having a sense of what they want or what they're doing, really. So, yeah, I'm unpopular opinion, but I find some of the songs fillerish on Misunderstood, but not this one. This one always jumped out to me. It's not the only one. Like I also like Respect and 18 Wheeler. Um, but I really just liked the sentiment of this one, which is why I picked it off of Misunderstood. So now we're going to skip over Try This. It's a minor semi spoiler that my number one favorite deep cut comes from Try This. So we'll get to that at the end. We will take another step forward to Pink's commercial comeback of sorts after the diminishing returns at radio with Try This and the first couple singles off of I'm Not Dead, before she came roaring back with You in Your Hand in late 2006. But this is track 3 that I always felt could be a single, but it was not. And so I can include it here. It's called Long Way to Happy. So, minor content warning, I guess. When I for the my speculation about the subject matter of this song. So I always personally interpreted this song as about picking oneself back up and trying to continue forward in the wake of sexual assault. But the way that it's written, it could also be um, just about the aftermath of suffering abuse of any kind. But the lyrics point to that in all sorts of ways about like being broken and damaged by another person and having to figure out a way to move forward, but never quite being the same. So, unfortunately, I think a lot of people, especially women and AFAB persons in our society, can relate to the subject material. But yeah, production wise, for lack of a transition from that heavy subject material, it has a rock influenced production that I think carries it well. There's a nice balance between the vocal performance and the keyboards and guitars that like they're never competing for each other, and but they're also both at the forefront, so it's not just a vocal driven song or just a production driven song. So I've always liked this song for its message, for the way that it still feels like it has a typical pop song structure, but it delivers a personal story about difficult subject material. And I'm actually surprised that she's able to perform this live, but I know back during the promo cycle for this album, there were some performances of it, and it may have been part of the tour for I'm Not Dead. But yeah, it's a powerful song. It conveys a lot of emotion, and it's always been one of my favorites on an album that is stacked. I think I maybe have one skip in the 13 songs, not counting the amazing B-sides from I'm Not Dead. So, yeah, if it's been a while since you've played this record, please give it a listen and spend some time with Long Way to Happy if it's uh, not too much for you. So, taking another step forward, we reach 2008's Funhouse album. And my pick of a deep cut from this record is called It's All Your Fault. As we've talked about a couple of times on this show, I do love when a song with a pretty traditional pop structure captures more nuanced emotional situations. And in this song, I mean, not only am I a fan of the electronic synthesizer driven production once it kicks in on the chorus, like I'm a sucker for that, but I love that it's kind of about this messy tension between like falling in love with someone and then things souring, but then turning around and being like, I really care about you and want you to be in my life, and it will devastate me if you decide to like end this for real. Um, which I don't know if that's something that it to me it feels like something that more people might have some experience with, and maybe it's not often talked about. It's certainly not sung about very often, but I really like that because like the chorus just being like, "It's all your fault. You called me beautiful," but then the end being, "But I'm running out of air and it's not fair." Basically, being like, I mean, it's not the most healthy or well-adjusted sentiment because it's kind of like it's kind of like looking at the other person and be like, your existence and attention made me fall in love with you, and it's your fault, and it's going to be your fault if you leave me, which is totally like forcing the responsibility of your feelings on someone else, which is not okay. But at least the idea of like coming to the crossroads in a relationship and being like, do we break up or do we stick it out and work through our problems and fix this? So, and it's couched in a very energetic um, pop rock song. So, it's always fascinating to me that people can make songs that most of the general public may not necessarily pay close attention to the lyrics, but it's rewarding for those that do. So that's why this is one of my favorites from the Funhouse album. There's a lot of interesting gems on this album as a whole because Pink was separated from her husband at the time. And this was the album where she kind of vented and processed all of those feelings. And then they ended up getting back together and working things out afterwards. But yeah, it's a very interesting, it's like a not quite divorce album. So very interesting lyrical journey and emotional journey on this one. So now we're going to lighten things up quite a lot with a track from 2012's The Truth About Love. It's called Slut Like You. I'm not a slut. I just love love. My sister and I send that back to each other at times. It's just a short audio clip. It make it makes for a great and shocking ringtone if you need one. Yeah, this is just such a fun song. But it's not completely unserious. I remember Pink talking about this during the promotion cycle for The Truth About Love, and it being sort of flipping the script about like a group of women going out and like looking out and scouting the men, trying to be like, who am I going to take home to hook up with? And so, like, reversing the typical dynamic of a group of guys going out and trying to find a girl to take home and hook up with. And yeah, I just think it's a really fun ride, a pun intended, if you will. But yeah, like the song is, I don't know, it's satirical and a little serious at the same time. The production is just ace. It's guitar driven. It has a lot of energy that it kind of like rolls back and forth. And it almost feels like you're getting slightly more intoxicated through the entire song. Like each verse and chorus cycle is like having another drink, and the room gets a little bit fuzzier and things start to feel like you're floating around a little bit. And then it just kind of ends. It's very much like a go to the bar, flirt with people, go home, hook up, and then be sent on the way with the walk of shame, which is another track on this record. Yeah, that's one of the things I've really liked about Pink's career is she balances the fun with the serious with songs like this. That and sometimes she marries them with songs like this. There's this satirical social commentary about gender norms and gender roles in straight society, and also like it's just like a fun romp that's kind of silly and campy. So, and I mean other songs like "Cause I Can" and "Walk of Shame" and oh, what was the one on Funhouse? I'm not remembering the title, but like being able to include all of that and like not just having a singular lane as an artist, but being able to incorporate the fun too. So that's what I like about this. But The Truth About Love is my second favorite album by her. So I had a difficult time picking. I could have picked most of this, but I couldn't pass up Slut Like You because of that intro and my history with it. Ah, so anyway, next up we are going that Pink took an extended break after The Truth About Love to have a second child and to, live life a bit, raise her kids, enjoy the time with them while they were small. And so her next album was called Beautiful Trauma and came out in 2017. And the song I picked from this record is called Where We Go. I always think that on this record, Pink was in her Of Monsters and Men, Mumford and Sons era. This song, Where We Go, in particular, makes me think of Monsters and Men with songs like Little Talks, Mountain Sound. It has that kind of like organic live band stomp along outdoor kind of sound. And I love for some reason the chorus with her like going kind of up a scale almost. It just feels like doing a backflip in the air. Like I don't know, I have a couple like images in my head that recur for different songs. Like we talked about this on the RuPaul episode with Fly Tonight about like feeling like you're just in an open field and then taking off into the air. I get kind of a similar image in my head with this song. Um, yeah, I don't know, it has that kind of like folky but slickly produced feel, but it gives me a warm feeling, even though the verses are kind of like sad and wistful. But yeah, it has that kind of coming home to rest kind of vibe. And it really sets it apart for me on Beautiful Trauma. Like, I have a playlist where I took Beautiful Trauma and the album that we're going to talk about in just a second, Hurts to Be Human, and took the best of both and made it into like one album long playlist because I felt like both had some filler, especially Beautiful Trauma, but their highs were very high and I think made a strong album when blended together. But Where We Go is one of those, and I just think it feels like a warm jacket on a chilly day to me when one has to take a journey through the cold to then get home to the fire and the warmth and the blankets and the stability. So, yeah. So, on to Hurts to Be Human, the album. There are two that I have pulled from this record because I think. Uh, hmm, Well, we'll talk about it after. But the first one is called Hey Why Miss You Sometime. So I picked Hey Why Miss You Sometime, not just because I like it, but also to talk about the fact it is the closest Pink has come to R&B since her debut record, which there's a small but vocal contingent of fans online who keep saying, "Oh, I wish she'd do R&B again." So this was like a little morsel for them when Hurts to Be Human came out a couple years ago. Well, like 6 years ago now. Yeah, I just like how relentless it is. Like I'm a big fan of R&B, if that's not clear already. So I like that there's those elements kind of there, but it's just like verse, chorus, back to the verse, chorus, ad libs, bridge, chorus, chorus. Like The song just doesn't let up, even though it has very fast emotional turns back and forth. Like the verses are about feeling uh what's the word I want to use? Like being overwhelmed and like giddy, like I feel like intoxicated is not quite the right word, but maybe that fits. Being in love with someone. And then on the chorus you realize it's the speaker ruminating about someone from their past who, like, now they know it was not a great relationship, probably possibly an abusive relationship, but that there was something intoxicating about when the times were good and maybe their sex life. But the chorus is just being like, okay, I've got to just get through these feelings and remember that this relationship overall was a net negative and I'm not going back to it, but acknowledging it's like, hey, I still miss this person sometimes. So, yeah, it's an interesting emotional scenario that's captured in some sort of R&B production, but it was something we hadn't heard from Pink in a while. So the next song, I said I picked two from Hurts to Be Human. It's in part because Pink only has 9 albums, or 8 albums. Yeah, 9 albums. And I needed a 10th song. And so I sat and like listened and was like, okay, what jumps out to the top for me? So I also picked 90 Days with Rabel, which is what we'll hear next. Damn. That song is a career best. I dare anybody to listen to that song and not feel something. Every time I hear it, it gives me chills and it brings tears to my eyes. It tells the story of the tumultuous thoughts in somebody's head of doubt, self loathing, but really feeling needy underneath, but being afraid to express those needs. And then that turning into an anxiety spiral of fear that your partner's going to leave because of this perceived disconnect. It's just, it's such a stunning, beautiful, sad song that captures a very specific scenario. Again, it's just piano and vocals with a small interpolation of Imogene Heap's. I don't remember the name of the song. But anyway, that's not important. Everyone knows that What You Say because it was sampled by Jason Derulo. But yeah, I just love this song to pieces. Like, just when you think she can't get any better, she delivers a song like this, and it's just breaks you in a way that you want sad songs to break you if you're a person like me who enjoys the emotional ride of sad songs from time to time. But yeah. Ah, I just love it so much. So that's why I had to include it. This was in contention to be the number 1 song at the end of the episode. I would say it's probably number 2 if I were ranking the whole thing, but we'll get to my number 1 eventually. I just did want to touch on what I mentioned before, which was, I think I've mentioned this in Sprinkles, but part of the mission that I have with Diva Deep Cuts is to showcase later career albums by female and queer singers who get pushed aside by radio, by audiences, by executives, and get turned into legacy artists or touring artists or sent off to obscurity to show that they are at the height of their creative powers because of their life and career experience, and nobody is listening to them, or at least not enough people are paying attention to them when that happens. So my mission is to showcase these amazing songs from recent albums from established musicians to show that, yes, in fact, their talent is not diminished just because they're not young and commercial darlings anymore. That does not mean that the music that they produce is bad. It just means that the attention has shifted away from them because of the music industry's focus on youth and newness. So, with that, I will get off of my little soapbox, and we will take another step forward to Pink's most recent album, Trustfall, with the song Lost Cause. I still love this track. I sang its praises when I reviewed the Trustfall album in early 2023 in the first season of this podcast. So I'm not going to belabor the point, but the emotional poignancy and pain delivery of this song are just beautiful. And I wanted to showcase it again because I don't know how many people have listened to the Trustfall album. I'm not sure how far and wide Pink's reach is, at least in the United States these days. She still gets some radio traction, but I'm never quite sure. And Lost Cause is just a stunning ballad from her. And if you want to hear my initial reaction to the song, go and listen to the Trustfall episode on Spotify and, check it out there. So now we have made it to my favorite Pink deep cut. And you may be wondering what could possibly beat out 90 Days. And I said it was from the Try This record, which is one that I do love. It's in part because I rediscovered it when I was the same age she was when she recorded it. But I chose the 6-minute long epic song called Waiting for Love. So let's give it a listen now. And with that, my darlings, we have come to the end of our journey through Pink's catalog. I hope you found some gems to enjoy that you may not have heard before. And remember, if you want to hear the bonus clips of the forgotten single choices, please head over to divadeepcuts.com, where you can subscribe to the email list for exclusive access to this bonus content. There's also links to social media where you can follow me on there, as well as the blog posts that go with each episode, covering the honorable mentions and including links to the complimentary playlists that I curate for all of these episodes. So thank you, as always, so much for listening here on Spotify or on YouTube, and I look forward to the next journey with you. For now, I am Ben, and this is Diva Deep Cuts. One of my markers of a good song is if listening to it helps me visualize a music video very quickly, if it's not already a single with its own music video. And I've always felt that way about Waiting for Love. There's something about the guitar licks under the verses that just send a chill up my spine and get me kind of like attentive to the song being on. And I just have this visual of like Pink in a dress in a field on a sunny day, but it's like grainy film footage. I don't know cinematography terms. And tilted angles, and then like when the chorus kicks in, either the sky changes or an eclipse happens or the color just changes to like black and white or like black and white and red and some grayscale, and a band appears around her and then disappears for the more gentle production under the verses, but kind of like going back and forth like that. And then the calming down of the outro is just her like leaving this field, and it's not a flat field. It's like her in a meadow field with hills around, so that there's some levels and angles to the whole picture. But yeah, I don't know. The song has just always spoken to me. It's one of those where the track right before it on the record is a solid, fine track on its own, but my enjoyment of it is diminished by my anticipation to be like, Waiting for Love is coming next. I can't wait for it. I'm so excited because Waiting for Love is coming next. So, yeah. And not only have I loved this song for years, but the Try This album was Pink's least commercially successful with no really big breakaway hits. I wish Trouble were a hit. I don't understand how it wasn't. It's catchy, it fits in with Pink's attitude and style and image, and seemed like a fine segue from Get the Party Started, but you know, it's water under the bridge, and I can listen to Trouble as much as I want in my own home, regardless of how big or small of a hit it was at the time. Anyway, check out the Try This album if it's a Pink album you're not familiar with. It is a rockin' good time, mostly produced by Tim Armstrong.